Hello, welcome back to the channel. John Schaefer here. Today we're talking about residency training. I actually wrote a book on the topic last year as I was applying to residency programs because I didn't feel like there was enough information out there. I wanted something that was gonna help me understand if residency training was right for me, know how the process works, what sorts of things to look for, what sorts of things to avoid, and just something that would walk me step by step through exactly everything I needed to get from applying to residencies all the way through. So I'm going to create some more videos here to hopefully provide some more of those resources. If you're interested in checking out the book, I'll put the link in the bio. But today we're just talking about, is a residency program right for you? And what sorts of things to be even thinking about when it comes to residency training. So it's important to note that when it comes to residency training, most residencies have three pillars: mentorship, academia, and then clinical practice. So thinking about mentorship is one of the biggest reasons that people go after a residency program or try and apply to one. Because as new grads, oftentimes we feel like maybe we're not quite ready to practice. We got a great education in PT school, but maybe it didn't cover, areas of differential diagnosis or manual therapy quite as in depth as we would have liked, or even exercise prescription. So how do we manage this period as we kind of transition from school to those first couple of years of practice? A lot of people select a residency program specifically for that mentorship piece, because what we've seen is that with a lot of different jobs, oftentimes we'll be offered mentorship, but it won't necessarily be that structured mentorship, or you won't always be getting exactly what you're looking for there. So if you do decide to pursue different jobs instead of residency, always ask, is the mentorship structured? Because having that structured time, that time set aside, is super, super important compared to just saying, oh yeah, there's mentorship included, without any real parameters. So other things to think about with mentorship when it comes to a residency program, and this goes back to the structured piece too, our residency programs are required to include 150 hours of one-on-one mentorship. And this can look different for a lot of different programs. Like some programs will have you working with your mentor on your mentor's patients. Other programs will have your mentor watching you work with your patients. And then other programs will have you get mentorship like while you're mentoring a student. So getting mentored on how to mentor. That's a mouthful. But yeah, the program I did specifically, I had 7 different mentors, which is really beneficial. So you can see a lot of different treatment styles, a lot of different ways that people practice, and then incorporate those different pieces into how you want to practice. So I think to date, I'm at like 280 something hours of one-on-one mentorship, which has been really, really beneficial. And I think honestly, probably the biggest piece that I've gotten out of residency so far. So that mentorship piece, keep in mind, that's something really, really important to consider, as that's kind of a cornerstone of most residency programs. The next is going to be academia. So thinking like research, thinking about teaching, are those things you're interested in? Residency programs can offer a lot of different opportunities to get involved in those things early on. For example, I've been able to be a lab TA. I've been able to give lectures at DPT schools. I've been able to help out with different in-services and things like that. Teaching is a big interest of mine, and residency programs kind of sped up my ability to get involved in some of this teaching, because a lot of times it's difficult for someone right out of school to be able to get more involved or get teaching experience. So having that on my resume now moving forward, I think is something that's awesome. And if you're interested in getting involved in teaching, different residency programs will place a different emphasis on it, especially if you're working like with an academic institution. You're just going to have that much more exposure to DPT students and really be able to, get involved and get comfortable with some of that teaching. When it comes to research, this is another big piece to consider. Some residency programs will have a heavy emphasis on research. Others will have a little bit lighter emphasis and just trying to give you some exposure. So it really just depends on, again, what you're looking for. Are you looking for kind of that fast track, get involved with more research, or are you just interested in exploring things a little bit and seeing, maybe if you want to do research in the future? But either way, most residency programs will have like a capstone research project or presentation. I'm doing mine on the effects of strength training on cyclists and potential for injury reduction. So this is just an interest of mine. I did a survey, so I've went through the process of picking all the survey items, sent out the survey, and then we'll analyze the data with some help with some of the faculty. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't have to love research, but just keep in mind when you're applying to different programs, there's going to be different emphasis on different areas. The last pillar is going to be clinical practice. So thinking about, professional growth. So the whole reason of a residency program is to prepare you to take the specialty exam in the area that your residency is in. So whether that's orthopedics, whether it's neuro, sports, women's health, no matter what area it is, in order to take the board exam, typically individuals will need to amass at least 2,000 hours of care within that population over 10 years, with 25% coming in the last 2 years. And then there's also different requirements depending on the specialty. So you need all that time, or you can complete a postgraduate residency in that specific specialty. So the residency program is kind of a fast track to be able to take that exam a little bit sooner. If I didn't do this residency program, it'd probably have taken me maybe 2 years to be able to sit for that board exam. So it kind of speeds things up a little bit. Other things to consider when thinking about if you want to apply to residencies, kind of weighing the importance of those 3 pillars and thinking about, are you going to get enough at your first job, or is this something where you feel really strongly about one or multiple of those areas that you want more exposure. So for me, I think the mentorship piece was big, the getting more exposure, really feeling comfortable with orthopedic conditions, and knowing that after this year, I'll be in a good position to be able to treat, anyone who walks through the door, and feel pretty confident with that. But I understand that a residency program doesn't necessarily make sense for everyone. There's a lot of other things to consider, such as the cost, such as a time commitment, because it has been a lot of time. It's been a challenging year. It's been very rewarding. But these are all just different things to consider what makes the most sense for you. Obviously, if you have a lot of commitments, if there aren't a lot of residency programs in your area, all things to really consider, because there's a lot of great continuing education opportunities to pursue on your own. And I think you'll still get benefit. It just kind of comes down to, the quality as well as kind of the hands-on and how much actual structure there are to things. And I think for me too, that structure was a big piece. I want to make sure that I was getting all this information. I want to make sure I was getting good feedback. And I wanted to make sure that I was going to get the most out of this first year of practice, because that transition is not necessarily an easy one, but if you have a lot of support, you have a lot of people kind of guiding you through, it's much easier to develop your thought processes and develop your treatment style, who you're going to be in a clinician. They say that the first couple of years have the greatest influence on how you're going to practice long-term as a clinician. So being able to really make sure that you spend that, those first couple of years developing good habits, understanding your treatment style, and building your confidence with patients, I think is, really serve you well in the long run. So those are just some things to think about. I go into a little bit more depth in the first chapter of the book, but that kind of covers, some of the big things you're thinking about, why to do a residency in the first place. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the comments below, and I'm more than happy to answer. Because like I said, this experience thinking about whether or not to apply, and then the actual application process, it's time consuming, it's not super clear cut, and I want to make things as simple as possible. So you don't have to, waste as much time and spend as much time wondering if you're doing the right things. So I'm happy to try and speed that up for you. And we'll see you in the next one.